we went to the first SCAA event. And at that SCAA event, my dad overheard a conversation of one of the first specialty farmers in El Salvador. And he was talking about how in specialty coffee, the type of water you use for washing, the moment you harvest, the pH of the fermentations, the time of the fermentations, everything was important. And my dad looked at me and said, Raul, the business I knew has nothing to do with the business of specialty coffee.
Hi, everybody. I'm David Paparelli, co-founder of M-Cultivo, and welcome back to the Cupping Table podcast, where the best coffee producers and buyers share their stories, insights, and outlook on the specialty coffee space. Our guest today is Raul Rivera, the founder of legendary farm Finca Santa Rosa in El Salvador. Raul has won first place in Cup of Excellence an astounding 4 times. And actually, it's 5 times with an asterisk. We'll talk about that a little bit today. Raul has been an evangelist for El Salvador coffee for over a decade. He was a big part of the journey of Pacamara, taking specialty in El Sal to the next level. Raul, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, David. Thank you for including us in your program.
Absolutely. So start this podcast off, if you've heard us before, Raul, with the same question. What is the best cup of coffee that you've had recently?
I mean, I don't want to brag, but recently my coffee, but I've had for me, the most amazing cup of coffee that I had was actually a coffee it was in a calibration for Q grader. It was from Yemen. It was roast tea. It was so silky. It was very, very different, and it was so nice and sweet. It was a very different cup profile, and it was outstanding.
Did you do your calibration in El Salvador, or was that somewhere else?
I always calibrate. I used to calibrate. I stopped doing calibrations this year because they changed so much the profile
Yeah,
that
CVA and all that. Yeah.
Yes, but I used to do it all with Guatemala with Eduardo Ambrosio. For me, is one of the best teachers for CQI. He's very methodic and very, in my opinion, one of the best professionals in the CQI network.
I hadn't thought about your opportunity to try coffees all over the world. I mean, obviously, people go to coffee shows, World of Coffee, SCA, that sort of thing. But to be able to try coffees and focus on them, calibration, if they're bringing coffees to Central America for you to try, it's probably a good opportunity just to get exposed to these different coffees, varietals, origins.
And it is one of the reasons I joined the program CQI is to understand more what my customers were exposed to and the language they spoke, because at the beginning we were pretty much blindsided. We were just producing coffee and didn't even understand what the rest of the world was doing. What was our main drive or focus to achieve within our cup? We had no idea. And that's the other thing that gave us the other program that helped us is COE, because some farmers here tell me, stop competing. You should compete. I mean, you already won. And I tell them it's the same as Formula One. You don't have McLaren and Ferrari stop competing because they won 1 cup. They keep trying to overachieve, to push their teams, to push their engines, to become more efficient, to become better quality, and to understand what the market wants, because coffee is a very dynamic market. Sometimes they want more fermentation. Sometimes they want less fermentation, more chocolatey, less chocolatey, more fruity. So you have to be linked to something that's telling you where the market is going.
You had that in COE, I think. This isn't necessarily my argument, but I guess the argument would be that COE originally was meant to be sort of the sourcing discovery mechanism, right? And if Raul is winning, 4 or 5 times in a period of a decade, do we really need to discover Raul still? But what you're saying is, or Finca Santa Rosa, but what you're saying, I think, is right, which is, it's not about discovering me. It's about moving El Salvador coffee to the next level and this kind of rising tide effect that would lift all boats. If you get better, then the community gets better, sort of thing.
Exactly. The more competitive you become, the more you push your peers, and everybody pushes in the same direction. That's what Panama did. I mean, and that's what I tell people. It's not we don't have to invent the wheel. Panama already did it, and I mean, they could keep competing, and it's the same people, and sometimes like the Lamastus family won, I think, straight, like almost did a three-peat. They went back to back, and you would think, oh, they're gonna keep winning, but then La Esmeralda came over and said, here we come. so that's and they were able to achieve this because they had to push themselves hard, because they had somebody was raising the bar. If you get too comfortable, you become lazy.
Yeah, and so for you and your team and your operations, this competition has been a big part of not just your fame, your renown around the world, the building of your brand, but have you seen the coffee, say, this year, or yeah, I guess it would be 2025 coffee, be markedly better than a decade ago as a result of these competitions? How would you gauge that?
What we have gained through all these competitions mainly is being able to hit the mark over and over. Gives trust to our customers to know that, because a lot of the people that compete in COE tell you, oh, winning a COE is sheer luck. It's like winning a lottery. It's like randomness. But by doing it over and over, you prove that it's just a matter of discipline, hard work, and commitment to doing it, and you can do it over and over. And I think if all the industry did the same commitment, we could do amazing stuff like Panama has done in the past 10 years.
Yeah, I mean, you probably also seen El Salvador progress in a different direction as well in coffee too, where Panama, you know, kind of went through this influx of there weren't very many producers that started off with SCAP and Best of Panama, and then a lot of producers came in, and it's sort of kind of meeting this, but we're not talking about thousands and thousands, right? It doesn't feel that way. It feels more like, hey, there's like 100 great producers, right? I mean, I feel like El Salvador is at this point where it's kind of moving from, you know, maybe larger amounts of production down to kind of a subset of producers that are really doing very, very high end specialty. Do I have that right? Where do I have that wrong?
I mean, I think in a way you're right, because a lot of people did abandon, but then having a having what we have done, and what other producers have done, and showcasing COE has made also newer generations get involved, which took a certain time frame. At the beginning, when I was in coffee 10 years ago, when I started, they called me the kid. I was a kid in coffee, because the rest of my peers were ancient. So now I'm becoming the ancient one, and there's a group of younger generation that are moving in because they saw that a guy like me was able to do it. So now it gave hope to newer generations to pull in, and they're raising the bar too. I mean, some of them are doing an amazing job. Some of them are moving into lower end specialty, but now the market is doing amazing with the C market prices at almost $5 a pound. So that creates opportunities for other farmers also to get in. And people are seeing hope in the industry, which is nice, because eh, there's a lot of benefits, not only economically, that come from coffee to a country like El Salvador. There's a lot of environmental benefits we gain through having a bigger coffee area planted with shade coffee within the country.
Are you worried about the next generation and that transition process, or next generation not, deciding to go out to El Campo and stay in the city?
The complicated part, and I talked to I was recently in a symposium in Medellin talking about coffee, and a lot of the people in the agricultural industry, it was not just coffee. There was two people related to coffee. One was me, and the other one was Ricardo Coiner from Panama. And everybody exposed they were worried about the lack of labor, because people don't want to work in the agricultural part. But I tell them, I don't think we should worry about it. because if the prices keep hiking and we're able to pay higher wages, people are still gonna maintain themselves working within agriculture. But what we have to be worried about is that we need to push prices a little bit higher, not only to roasters but to consumers, to be able to maintain. Because if we keep these de-incentivizing with low prices, I mean, the owner of the farm can only pay so much, and I mean, it's not about us being evil. It's that we need to create a profit margin, and if the price is so low, there's only so much we can pay pickers and our workers. So then people think, oh, this is a lot of work, and I can go to construction and get a little bit more. I'd rather work in construction. That's what's happening here. But like this year, what we're doing is, since the prices allow us to do that, we're paying higher wages. We're giving bonuses. We're also giving like incentives for people to come to us, and we're leveling the wages with construction. That way, people can think, well, coffee might be hard work, but it's in a really nice area. They treat me better. In construction, I need to move to a very harsh area. There's a lot of sun. There's no shade. I have to be under a lot of noise because in construction there's a lot of banging, a lot of and in the coffee farm is so nice. I mean, you've been to several farms. It's one of the most peaceful environments you can work in. So the only hardship they're gonna endure is having to carry a bag of coffee along a hill, which is exercise in a manner, but it's not as bad as having to be being exposed to a lot of sun in the middle of a lot of noise, a lot of dirt, a lot of in a construction site. So we're trying to make them understand that it's better to be working within agriculture than to work in a construction site. But that's us, and we're able to do it right now because of the increase in prices in the sea market price. We can ramp up a little bit our specialty prices, and that helps alleviate that pressure of not having a lot of resources to work with. And I think in the future, the price hikes will continue because of global warming, lack of human capital, and eventually the market's going to level out, and we're going to be in a more sustainable environment to help. What the industry, and I've talked to this with several customers, is industry always worries about how to help the poorest in the chain, which are the pickers and the labor of the farm. And the answer has always been raising the prices. I mean, there might be some farm owners that might not share their profits, but I think that's the other thing we have to educate. We have to educate our farmers to be more responsible and be more giving. Once they make more money, that should be shared with the lower part of the command chain in the human capital of the farm.
There's long-term kind of thinking in this, right? Which a lot of producers like yourself have sort of built into your ethos just by the nature of it being a multi-generational farm, all the work that's gone into it. A lot of businesses, they think about the next year, the next 2 years. I mean, a lot of producers think about the next 10, 20 years, right? How to pass it off to the next generation. Um, and, it, in that regard, you've had employees working for you for 10, 20 years. I mean, low turnover with trusted managers is going to help your farm operation. I hear this often. I want the best possible pickers. Well, how do you get the best possible pickers? It's probably not the guy who has 1 year's experience on a farm,
Exactly.
right? And so you kind of keep it motivated. But I think another thing you kind of glossed over there, which I want to get into, is it does need to be an economically viable operation. And I think that's probably a loaded statement, because what is economically viable? I'm not sure the winning strategy is go try and compete commercially. Commercial coffee will likely be won by a handful of players, as it always has. People with bigger bank accounts than you have, bigger lines of credit, better financing, more scale. more maneuverability around different origins, those kinds of things where quality just doesn't matter as much. You've done something completely different, though. I mean, and arguably, I'd say it's a completely different product, even though we're talking about the C market and this other class. What have you done over the last 10, 20 years to sort of take that path of differentiation and create a, what I mean, I guess what is specialty coffee El Salvador is what you created, right?
We we pretty much committed to compete. I mean, our entire production line is based on competing on COE. So we don't produce like some farms say, oh, we'll allocate this area for COE. We commit everything for COE. So everything goes through a process for competition. And whatever you're getting from us, and that's why our customers are happy. Like I've had a customers that even they raise their price on the coffee. Like, and for us, that's an honor because we try to label the coffee price as fair as we can, not to affect our roasters that buy from us. And I've had this past year, our quality was so outstanding that one of my customers said, "I'm going to pay you more for it." And for us, that's a great achievement because if even he believes that he's underpaying something, is because the quality we're committed to is so high that he's like, no, I have to pay more. And we were very honored by by his gesture. And this is Onyx in the United States. Very few buyers will do that. But we try, like I tell you, we try to price everything as fair as we can, both to pay good wages and also for our buyers not to be overwhelmed by a pricing that's not manageable. But yeah, I mean, when we committed to COE, so everything nutrition wise is dealt with the most organic, or we work, like I tell people, I don't believe in certifications because we have a team of 3 engineers. Certifications work when you have no understanding of how to produce or how to work or how to do traceability. But if I have 3 engineers working with me, I mean, that's what we went to school for. And we all went for agriculture. So it would be senseless for me to tell them, oh, we need somebody to explain to us how to do this. And we work with everything is residual free. Like we don't use glyphosate. We don't use anything that's harmful for the environment. The worst thing we use is one application of Amistar, which is one of the fungicides that's least harmful for the environment. And we do one, and then we do one with copper to control leaf rust. The rest is, in some cases, we use both organic and inorganic fertilizers. And the reason is, and I always explain that to people, is when you have a pregnant wife, she goes to the doctor and the doctor says you have a deficiency of calcium. The doctor's not going to say, "Oh, we have to get it organically, and you have to chug like 2 gallons of milk every day," because there's no way she's going to do it. So he gives her a pill of calcium just to supplement. In the same manner we do, because we do soil sampling every year. We see what our deficiencies are. We do the organic fertilizer because we've seen the amazing results that gives. But if we have a deficiency of phosphorus or of potassium, we will supply with the best source of potassium we can find in the market, and or the best source of phosphorus, organic or inorganic. Because what we are after is the best nutrition for our plants. And the better the nutrition, the better the quality of the bean. And therefore the better the cup quality, and the profiles are outstanding.
And most people do this, right? I mean, in competition, auctions, they're kind of used as the R&D department of coffee, right? A lot of people think through it as I'm going to take a subset of my coffee and I'm really going to try and do some crazy stuff with it, whether that's from a processing perspective or from a varietal exploratory perspective, or the story of Panama of I'm just going to start growing things at 2,100 meters and above, right? I mean, things like that where can coffee even grow that high? The sounds of it, you kind of turned your entire operation into an R&D department. Do you have any aspect of it that isn't kind of in that
Ev-
methodology?
Every Everything is like every year we experiment with new processing. We repeat some processing. We will repeat sometimes, and then we will modify. We change every year, and everything is accounted for. Everything there's a record for everything we do, and the manager in charge of everything is an engineer, so she knows how we change one variable, and we do it year after year. And if we see that we can improve on that variable and we could change it and tweak it a little bit more in a manner that the profile is going to come out better, we will. And that's one of the reasons this COE first place was so outstanding, because before we started recording, we were talking about the difficulty of roasting a Pacamara. That Pacamara that you have right now in your hands has a particular thing. The roast curve you use will make it outstanding, even though if you're learning how to roast, it'll come out great. And that's due to nutrition. We found that if the Pacamara is very, very well nurtured, even though it's a big bean and it's less dense than a Bourbon or a Geisha, it will still burn in a manner that the profile, I mean, the taste profile is going to be outstanding. The issue with the Pacamara comes when there is deficiencies in nutrition. Then it's trickier to roast it because some of the beans tend to be less dense, some more dense. So hitting the mark, it's magic. Like very few roasters are able to have the patience, and it's hard work, and that's why a lot of people tend to stay a little on the sidelines with Pacamara.
Or they start praying while they're roasting, right?
Exactly.
There's a belief system that develops around it. I remember I started in coffee about 15 years ago. Pacamara and El Salvador were almost synonymous, right? I mean, it was one of these things where it was going to be a Pacamara El Salvadoran versus a Bourbon is to Guatemala versus a Geisha was to Panama versus on, right? And so you kind of get these origins related to these varietals, but you sort of lived through that Pacamara surge, right? I mean, that must have been right as you were taking over the farm operation from your dad. Can you walk us through what happened there and that story of Pacamara?
The story is very nice because my dad, when we planted Santa Rosa, we had to decide. I mean, my dad started in coffee in the 1980s, and the idea was to produce coffee, not specialty was not even close to appearing. So we started with farms at 1,100 meters, and we had another farm at 1,600 meters, which was high elevation for El Salvador, which is high elevation worldwide right now. But the main approach was productivity. It was not quality. Then in the 1990s, mid 1990s, the crisis of coffee, the prices went to the below the floor. And my dad said, this is not a business. I mean, we have to abandon because it's more expensive to harvest. And that's what I was telling you. I mean, if you then de-incentivize production, people are just going to stay away. So we can't pay a picker, so we might as well just let it rot. So we abandoned coffee mid 1990s, and then
What was the
still,
price of coffee at that point? Do you remember what the price
I
of
think it
coffee
was
per pound was?
like 80 cents a
God.
pound.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
it was absurd. I mean, you couldn't do anything with that. I mean, nobody would harvest coffee. So, and at that time we were only producers. So if let's say the price was 90 cents, the exporters at that time would pay 80 to 75 cents a pound, which is ridiculous because now we export coffee directly. So for us, there's no middleman. Like we have closed the gap as much as we can, and that helps us also being more sustainable. So then in the year 2000, I think COE came to El Salvador. The first COE showed up, and it was all over newspapers that they sold coffee at $10 a pound. My
Mm.
dad was like, there is hope. And he told me, these prices, we could do business. But at $1 a pound, there's no way. So he said, you know what? We're gonna plant a new farm and we're gonna focus on winning COE. That was his words. So he planted Santa Rosa was actually a forestry plantation, mainly with pine tree and cypress. And we started cutting down some of the cypress because it was very densely populated. So we left them the best specimens of forestry there. And then he said, we have to select the varietal. The best varietal El Salvador has to produce high-end coffee is Pacamara. So we're going to plant it 100% Pacamara. And that way we can overachieve an event where most of the coffees at the time were Bourbons and Pacas. So we planted that around 2000, 2003, 2004. And it took us until 2011 to show up to the first COE with my dad. 2011, we showed up. We had no idea how to do like specialty milling. We just washed the coffee, dried it, and sent it. Coffee got 5th place, 90 plus award. For us, it was like, wow, this is easy. Like we have no clue. We had no clue how we got the award next year, but that's what happens. Next year, we said, let's just do the same thing. Let's just tell the guys to replicate. But the guy in charge, or the people in charge we had at that time, were unskilled labor. So we submitted the sample. We didn't even make it. Like we were rejected. And we're like, what? I mean, last year we made the 5th place. Now what's wrong? So next year, my dad said, you know what? Let's do something. Let's give the coffee to a co-op, which is the co-op that had the most specialty awards within COE, and let them do the work for us. So we submitted to them. I'm going to avoid the name because some people I don't want to offend anybody. But the thing is, we made it to 13th place, something like that. And we were like, what? They were supposed to help us go up, not lower our standards. And then I sat with Thomas Polpen from Norway. He's from the States. And he said, Raul, but that doesn't, I mean, why did you do it yourself and then submit to a co-op? If you have the power to do it yourself, because that way you control more and you understand more. And I told my dad was alive at them, and my dad was like, yes, that's right, we should do it. And he said, I want a sample of your coffee. And we requested a coffee sample. And when we got the sample, the Pacamara bean is known for being a big bean. The sample came with small beans. And my dad was a very trustworthy, I mean, he would trust everybody. And he even said, this is not my coffee. And I was like, uh-oh. So we gave him the sample. And then my dad said, no, we're not giving them coffee anymore. But next year, we went to the first SCAA event. And at that SCAA event, my dad overheard a conversation of one of the first specialty farmers in El Salvador. And he was talking about how in specialty coffee, the type of water you use for washing, the moment you harvest, the pH of the fermentations, the time of the fermentations, everything was important. And my dad looked at me and said, Raul, the business I knew has nothing to do with the business of specialty coffee. There's a lot of attention to detail now, even nutrition wise. Before it was just about NPK, just giving it some nitrogen, some potassium, some phosphorus, and you're good. But now it's about how do you do exponential sweetness? How do you do something that's outstanding? Which element you have to play with more potassium here, a little bit more phosphorus here to balance out the cup and for the coffee to taste outstanding. So you don't have to only know nutrition, but you have to know copy. And at that time, we didn't even drink coffee. I didn't even drink coffee. So I was like, I started cupping, and then I got my Q grader. Well, we went to that. I skipped that part. We went to the SCAA, and 2 months later, my dad passes away. And for me, it was a big hit because I was working in corporate. I was working for AIG. And last conversation I had with my dad was, we have to bring some geisha here to grow because the geisha is a new thing. And that's the last thing he told me. And he was hyped. I mean, one of the things I thank the industry is that my dad was able to at least live his last years with a lot of emotion regarding what he loved to do. And he was very, very he was looking forward to see the farm become what he wanted it to be. But unfortunately, he passed away. Then I have to take over, and I had no clue. Like I had training in agriculture, he had trained me, but my main training in real life was at corporate. I had worked for GE Capital, I had worked for AIG, and I was like, okay, I need to understand what's going on in the farm. So the first thing I figured is I started cupping. I would look at the cuppers and they would, oh, this is good. And I was like, I would go and cup it. And I'm like, I would look at him and I'm like, what's good about it? And then he would, oh, because of, and then I would taste another one and he'd say, oh yeah, this is different. And I was like, at the beginning, I thought this was a BS science because for a guy who went to school in a scientific manner, for a cupper to tell you this is good and this is bad, and I'm like, he didn't go to. I mean, most of them don't even go to have a degree of engineering or anything. So for us, like, how is this guy explaining me which coffee is better than the other one if I have done all the hard work of a year, like nurturing it, nutrition wise, pruning it, harvesting it, post harvesting. And this guy just comes with a spoon and tells me, this is good, this is bad. Like, what? Well, I have to understand where the magic, I mean, if this is real or not. So I started copying and then I said, they came up with a CQI course. I was not a copper. And I said, worst case scenario, I'm going to fail it like horribly and I'm going to be the shame of the place, but I will learn something. So I paid for it. I just failed 3 exams. For me, I mean, I saw other cuppers that were 20 years of experience fail more than I did. So I was like, eh, that's decent. Uh, I took over the 3 exams and I got my certification. And that helped me understand better. Like I tell you, for me, Eduardo was a great school because he also made some comments in cupping that made me connect nutrition, harvest, post-harvest, and cupping. And then I figured this is what specialty is. If you understand everything, you speak the language of everybody. And that way you can deliver like if you tell me I want something that's more fruity, I can do it from nutrition. I can start and work with it and then eventually give you something that you're gonna be like, wow, this is what I was looking for. So that's what Panama does in a manner. And I've tasted some of the Panamanian coffee and it's overwhelming. Like they do it even better than us. And I mean they have better pricing. So I mean it also helps if you have better infrastructure and you get it through better pricing. But we're very thankful because through COE, after learning all this, we started doing the first honey process. We used to do only wash coffees, and we win the first place in that auction, in that COE. Right after my dad passed away, it had been like 8 or 9 months after my dad passed away. We win first place, and they tell me, "Would you like to give words?" And I said, I couldn't speak. I just I was blown away because I mean that was the dream of my father, and he couldn't see 9 months. He would have seen it. So I was speechless, but I was very happy. And then I mean next year I think we got like a 7th place or something like that. But we went down, and I figured, and that's what happens. Normally, human beings, you overachieve and then you relax. So my team was like, "Oh, we're the best." No, no, it's not about being the best ones. It's about being the best all the time. And that's what made Michael Jordan Michael Jordan. Like he won and he kept pushing. If you don't do that, then you just forget about it and you relax and you become lazy. So I started pushing my team and telling them, I mean, and that's the other part of the story. I mean, for me, in interviews, they tell me what's the biggest milestone in coffee. For me, it's a team. I mean, having a team that will go to hell with you and back. That's the difficult part because they believe in in what you're doing and they believe you will help them out. And that's one of the reasons, like right now, I'm working on a program. Like I create the first co-op in the region where I grow coffee to help producers. Unfortunately, that exercise did not end up as well as I expected because people are people. When you have too many opinions, everybody has their own opinion. And when you have so many difference of education, there's some people who will work with you, some people will work against you. So I said, you know what? I'll give you all this. You can do as you wish with it. I'm done. Because I don't have the time to be convincing like half of you guys that this is the way we have to go. If you believe it's another way, you just go. Because I'm done. But then that gave me the experience to create a co-op for my own employees. And this is the new project we're doing right now, is we've grown in our demand, so people want more coffee from us, but we need more coffee. So I have some plots of land that are not being planted, and I have a partner, which is my uncle, and he's not very into growing coffee because it's a harsh business. It takes the returns take long time. So I figured, I mean, he doesn't want to work with me, but my employees need a decent retirement. So I told my employees, let's do a co-op. I have the experience. Co-ops get a lot of benefits from tax breaks and stuff. So if we do a co-op for employees, we can grow coffee, sell the coffee to the company, and you guys, I can teach you because I have a good experience. I have grad studies in economics and I have experience in investments since 2007. So I can help you create a pension fund individual. It's going to be managed by you guys under my advice. You can follow it if you wish, or you can just use your money and buy a car if you want. But I assure you, if you follow my advice, you're going to retire very well. And they're hyped about it. And this is a new project we're building on. And it goes back to what I told you. If we create incentives for everybody within our workforce to work with us, we're never going to be lacking people to work with us. And that's what
Mm.
Google does. That's what Apple does. That's what Meta does. I mean, you go there and you have cafes, and everything's free for the employees. So who doesn't want to work there? But you don't have that in agriculture because we are the lowest one in the chain. So normally the profit margins are not there. So we can't really give them. But we can find ways to create opportunities where there's a win-win. So my employees work at this farm, the harvest is theirs. We pay top dollar because we know that it's the same quality as the other farms, and we get a margin to export to our own customers. And there's a lot of social benefits towards it because we're helping everybody within the team, and in anybody can be part of it. Like I have not limited the participation to only even employees. It could be people who we work with, like even roasters that we work with can tell me, hey, I want to be part of this and I'll give you, and the amount you put up is your participation. So that's how much you get. Like if we make 100K and you put 10%, you get 10% of that. And that's
Mm.
the way we've developed it. And like some employees, they don't have money, but they can work. So we pay top dollar for their work hours, and that's their participation over time. And since it's 4 years, you wait for the harvest, they get a good cushion to put into the equation. So it's an interesting project, and we might be able to talk about it in 5 years. And I
Where
might
where
tell
did you
you
get the where'd you get the idea for the structure for that? Because I mean, does that sound unique? I mean, there's kind of two parts of that, right? Where'd you get the idea for the structure, and then
my
why? Yeah,
one
why
of the
do it?
one of the biggest inspirations for me. I have never read his book though. Is the guy who owned Whole Foods,
Yeah,
Conscious Capitalism? That's the book.
yeah.
I just heard of the way he worked, and I figured, why doesn't everybody emulate this? Like if we did this, there wouldn't even be a socialist movement, because capitalism itself would be the solution for everything. But greed is overwhelming in human beings. So I mean, people start making money and think it's just because of me. They don't remember that you don't exist without a team. Like you can't do everything. So that's and through working at corporation, I worked with G Capital, and it was a joint venture with El Salvador, or with a company from Nicaragua, and I saw how greedy they were. And I mean, I worked my ass off, and I would get paid peanuts. And then I
Mhm.
moved to this corporation, bigger corporation. I got 10 times rewarded, and I felt even better working for them. But then eventually, when I did something really good for them, and they told me, don't worry about it. We're going to help you out. But instead of actually maximizing me, they told me, we're going to give you my dad passed away, and I was negotiating a position in Panama. They gave me the first offer, and it killed me because it was like, they were trying to trick me. It was like, if you're an idiot, you take it. And I was like, I'm not going to take this. And then they, oh, we're having issues, so we're going to give you a hiring bonus. And I know that tactic is mainly just a scam. I mean, it's not good. And I did an economic reasoning to the human resources department, and I explained to them through inflation why I was getting ripped off with the compensation bonuses and everything they were giving me. And she's like, "Oh, nobody has ever done this to us, but you're right. Let me give you another proposal." And they did a third proposal. The third proposal was outstanding. But you know what annoyed me? And I didn't take it because it took them three proposals. When I got
Mm.
to the company, I gave them my best shot since the first day I sat in the chair. I went back to my house like at 10 p.m. because I had to demonstrate I could overachieve in something I didn't even understand, because insurance is not something I was trained for. I went to school for agriculture and for economics. So my background was a lot of statistics. And then eventually I did studies in actuarial sciences for them. And I showed them they were being ripped off. They were not going to make a good business.
And I was going to ask you a question on that as well. Just the decision-making process when your dad passed away to become a coffee producer full time. What was that like? I mean, because it's a pretty wild thing to do when you're on a certain career path and you seem to be doing well, and you have to get off that ladder, that career ladder, and go do something that's much higher risk. What was that like? I mean, was that a difficult decision to make, or was it an easy decision?
It was very tough. And I sat down. It's funny because my mentor, my biggest mentor was my dad. And I had two bosses in my first job at the bank with the joint venture with GE Capital. The first boss, he was a cool guy, but I never got a lot of input from him. But I mean, I learned a little stuff from him. But the second guy, he was very harsh. I'm not going to use the words, but he wouldn't. I mean, he would call me to his office every day and shout at me and insult me every day. Like every day,
Oh
he would be
my
like,
god!
he would shout he'd throw stuff like and hit the table, and he told me you're an idiot, and I'm like, yeah, are you going to say something to me? And I'm like, no, I'm going to pass. And then he'd be, go to the work. And the first time he fired me, I cried for real. I mean, I cried like a baby because I felt I didn't know what to do. And after I was crying in my office, getting my stuff. He comes into he opens the door like violently. And this was like 8 p.m. It was overtime. And they don't give you a dime for overtime. So he goes to me and he's like, what you doing? And I was like, I'm, I'm picking up my stuff. And he's like, don't be an idiot. Finish what I told you and give it to me tomorrow in the morning. I stayed there like it was like half midnight, and I finished like all his requests. I did something really outstanding, and I go up to him and he's like, do I have to do this every time for you to do your stuff? And I'm like, this guy's ridiculous. I mean, he's crazy. But at that point, I wanted to kill him. But then eventually, when I left the job, we became good friends. And afterwards, I was told by another friend of mine that apparently he was scared of me because of I got hired by the CEO of the bank, and I was bilingual. I had higher studies than him. So he felt that I was a threat. So he wanted me out. But I never meant any harm for him. Like I was just doing my job. And when I left the company for AIG, I was asked by the CEO if I was leaving because of him. And I had the power to have him fired. And it was actually because of him. But I realized that I had gotten my new job because he had pushed me so much that I overexceeded what I learned in college, and I learned a lot of stuff, and I learned a lot of stuff. And most of the merit of my new job came from him, not from what I had learned before. So I figured I could be a jerk and have him fired, or I could just say, you know what, I'm moving on in my life to new
Mhm.
experiences. That's what I did, and and then I told my friend who knew him, and he told him, and he was ashamed because he knew that I could have destroyed his entire career at that time. And he treated me really awful while I was working with him. But then after that, he became, I did all this story because that's the reason I stayed in coffee, because I sat with him. He became my second mentor as my dad. And I sat with him and I told him, what would you do? Leave or stay? And he's like, Raul, it's personal. But if you ask me, I've always dreamed to have what you have. You work with me, you're amazing. And if you go corporate, you're going to kill it. If you stay in your stuff, I've heard you talk about agriculture, you're a fish in the water. It's your choice. So then I figured, well, my dad spent all his life in agriculture. Why would I just let it go away? So I figured he spent all his weekends working in the farm. I would go with him. So I figured might as well just keep showing the world what he did.
There's a legacy portion of that to kind of carry forward. And yeah, I mean, I'm kind of hearing in your voice that it's sort of you don't, your dad passes away. It's an incredibly difficult time. I can't imagine, and you don't want all his life's work to go with it, right?
It's
Um,
exactly.
and it's going to take everything that you have to keep it going. But it's one thing to keep it going, and it's another thing to do what you've been able to achieve, which is build significantly on what he had been able to lay the foundation for. In arguably a shorter amount of time, right? You said he started being a coffee farmer in the 80s. You know, you've been a full-time producer by the sounds of it for the last 10, 11 years, with some experience prior. You've done a lot in the last 10 years. I mean, you had a lot of things going for you, but um, I mean, were what you achieved in those 10 years a results of the lessons that you learned from your dad during that time, or was it building knowledge new and figuring your own way in coffee?
It was a combination of both because the my dad is my school for agriculture. Like there's there's a movie of zombies where I saw it. The Brad Pitt is in it. I don't remember the name, but it's the end of the world. And there's a
World
guy
War
who tells
Z?
Brad. So there's a guy who tells Brad Pitt, you have to look at the virus, and the virus will speak to you in the same manner. Nature will. That's what my dad taught me when I was like 10. Like we would go to farms, and he would tell me, "What do you see?" And I'm like, "A bunch of leaves." He's like, "No, look." And I would keep looking, and I'm like, "Look, this leaf is cut." No, 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 no. That's not. I mean, it's not about one thing. There's patterns. You have to look at patterns. The plants will talk to you. But if you just see one leaf, that's nothing. If you see a bunch of leaves doing something different, then there's an issue, and you have to address it, and you have to understand what's going on. If it's nutritional, if it's a plague, if it's an insect, and then you have to understand how to deal with it to create something good within the plantation without harming the environment. Like if you have an insect problem, the easiest way to deal with it is insecticide, but that kills everything. It'll kill the good bugs and the bad bugs.
Yeah.
So the easiest way to deal with it, or the smart way to do it, is put trap. Like normally those insects will create a problem because there's somebody in the food chain that's not eating them. So you have to find a way to do traps or to kill them without affecting the rest of the population of the good insects, because it's like your stomach. I mean, you can't just put a lot of poison in it and expect your health to be amazing. That's why some people, I mean, we've been taking poison all the time, so that's why we have to take probiotics to make our stomach
Yeah.
better. But nature itself will heal itself, and that's type of stuff I learned from my dad. And the corporate side, I did learn by working in two big corporations. You learn that, I mean, if you want to grow, you have to be able to make people have responsibilities and empowerment. You can't do it yourself. Like if you try to do everything, you're never gonna grow. You're gonna be a little farm where you're gonna be supervising fertilization, everything, and you're just gonna be enslaved by your farm. And that's it. You can't make the company grow if you're just at the farm.
Did you find that your dad, I mean, I'm kind of uh, asking this question. I think I know the answer, but did you find your dad cared more about coffee than he did about people? And then you kind of brought more of that pattern recognition and those principles that you taught him to the way that you manage kind
That
of
that's
people.
one point, and that's one of the things, and it's interesting that you point that out. But at one event of coffee, I told my dad, Dad, I saw all the farmers from our region. They were all in a little corner with the big hats. They were all scared of all the city people. And my dad was on the other corner, but he didn't mingle with the other guys from the other mountain ranges, the big hot shots. And I saw a picture and I looked at them and I said, Dad, you're not part of the community.
Mm.
And he looked at me and I said, you should be hugging those guys over there with the big hats because that way they embrace you and you're part of them. Right now, you're just a farmer in a region, but nobody will help you out or be a good neighbor with you because you're just the big shot in the region. And that's why I created the co-op. That's why, like, I've helped a bunch of farmers in my region because I believe you could call it karma, but I think what goes around comes around. So if you start helping people, people start helping you. And at the beginning of the conversation before recording, I told you I'd fired somebody who worked my dad. I found out because people started telling me, this guy's a crook, he's stealing from me. And it was noise, 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 more noise. And eventually it just made sense. And I was like, nah, this guy's a crook. So I fired him. And then after I fired him, a bunch of them came to me and said, I knew he was stealing from me. Like, why didn't you come up to me? We were
Oh
scared because this
gosh.
guy, we didn't want to be in trouble, but at least it confirmed my suspicions. And it was, I mean, if you ask me, I would have put him in jail. But yeah, then again, what comes around goes around. So we'll see what life brings to him after what he did. Because we were never like, if I try to help somebody, it was him. Like, because I realized the future of the farm was in his hands. So if he asked for a raise, we would give it to him. If he asked for something, we would give it to him. And eventually, I found out the guy was not a good person. But yeah, I mean, what you said is totally true. My dad didn't really. He was not a people person. Like he was not very good at in the intuition of understanding what he had to do. But then again, you have to understand that they came from management. Old management in El Salvador was more about numbers and not about people.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, you can see that sort of. I could see that in the agricultural space change an awful lot. I mean, you also had models that were examples too in the corporate. I mean, you mentioned Whole Foods. I'm listening to something on Trader Joe's. It's a similar kind of a similar methodology to managing people, where people are kind of really part of a team, and it's a whether you compare it to a cooperative and you create a structure around that, or you compare it to sort of, well, Trader Joe's, it was sort of, you have the captain on staff. It was more like a ship, but it's this idea that we're in this together. Like we all own equity in it. There's ownership of it, and ownership, a portion of ownership means that there is risk, but there's also reward. I mean, and a lot of folks try and, as business owners, you're taking on so much risk. They try and kind of, force down the rewards segment on their team, on their employees, and kind of to try and offload some of the risk. And it's just not a fair, it's just not a fair distribution there. And so I appreciate you giving that co-op. I'd be interested to see how that goes in 5 years, because it sounds like, I mean, from an academic perspective and all, I mean, it's going to be awesome to see an exercise, but somebody should write a white paper on what you're doing too, just to see kind of this is something that could proliferate in coffee and work for coffee. I do want to talk to you about the Dubai coffee auction as we, start getting to the end of our conversation here. Is you've submitted a lot, so this is sort of an extension. This is the first time we've met, so this is interesting for me because I've heard from my team, but I'd love to hear from you directly. We're doing this Dubai coffee auction for the second time in January at the World of Coffee in Dubai. It will be live, a different style of auction. It was really exciting this year, 2025. I'm sure it'll be really exciting next year, 2026, just because there's so many producers from around the world, some of the best in the world. Yemeni will be there. Mokhtar Al Kanshali will be there. He'll have 2 lots in. So you get to try some more Yemeni coffee. But you know, why kind of move beyond El Salvador? Why move beyond COE into this new auction? What made you want to be a part of this new experience?
I visited Japan, I think it was like 5 years ago. And I got through coffee and through the work I've done socially, Japanese government met me and they're like, Raul, we want you to be part of, we want you to do business with Japan. And we'll give you a volunteer. We're gonna do in a magazine, in Standard Magazine. We're gonna do an article regarding what you do in Chalatenango, and we're gonna send you 3 weeks to Japan so you learn about our culture and how to do business with us. When I was there, I was mind blown how their agricultural scenery works. and it's all about auctions. And I believe for agriculture to thrive, the more auctions we do, and the more we have people understand that there's outstanding stuff there to be discovered, but we have to be able to pay higher prices for it. And the only way we could do it is auctions is the best way to allocate a, the most efficient way the price of a good. You can call it a Pokemon card, you can call it a sports card, you can call it a collection, or a good that's consumable for human beings. If it's high end, it shouldn't just be bought like something you buy in the supermarket, because then you do not incentivize more of this to come out from production. And the more we cater to this side, the better for the industry, because there's a lot of amazing coffee that could go into these auctions to be discovered by people who are actually willing to taste something amazing in their cup. And the more we push it, we go back to where we started. The farmer is able to put down or pass it on to the picker, pass it on to the people who's fertilizing, because we have more. And it also creates an incentive to do more of this, to do more R&D, more experimenting, and then you might be able to come up with a lot that's amazing for COE, and a lot that is amazing for the auction of Dubai or for other auctions. We can start creating and participating. I think what you guys are doing is top of the line, and it helps a lot the industry. And I wanted to do it at one point. That's a project I had, is to do an auction, but I'm in the middle of a lot of stuff, and it takes a lot of work. And my and in my team, at least, I don't have somebody who could. If I started, I don't have anybody who I can allocate to keep and
Yeah.
continue that. So maybe in the future, maybe my kid, when he grows up, or maybe I'll never see that, or maybe when I die, my kid says, like, I took over my dad. He says, "Oh, my dad wanted to do an auction. I'll do an auction in his honor." So I don't know, maybe,
Yeah.
but
Well,
I'm a big fan.
well, I'd agree with everything you said. I'm obviously very biased, but I think we've seen a lot of good come from it, and we'd be happy to partner on more things with you in that vein. If you need somebody to outsource it to, we're always happy to jump in and get our hands dirty, figure that out, especially with good partners. But yeah, this coffee you have as well is kind of unique. It's a Pacamara Honey, right? Can you talk about what's special about the coffee that you put into the Dubai auction?
That coffee is, for us. It was. I mean, we tried, like I told you, most or all our coffee goes through the same process as if it's gonna be submitted to COE. That lot is part of the lot that I told you that you can roast it the way you want to roast it. We tried roasting it in 3 different curves, and the coffee was outstanding. So we knew that if we submit that to an auction, like whoever is roasting the sample, he could be the best roaster and do an amazing curve. The coffee is going to taste outstanding. Or he could be a startup roaster. He could do a medium good job, and the coffee is going to be outstanding. So the more you take out of the equation, I mean, the margin of error, the better the outcome. So this coffee is something that's, for me, it's just great. I mean, it's super sweet on its own. It's got good plum, like dry plum notes. It's just outstanding, and it's very fruity, very nice. It
You're
doesn't
saying
have any.
this comes from nutrition primarily, and then the processing methods of because that's what's so it's I haven't heard anybody talk about it that way in the same. I mean, people talk about based on the terroir and the fruit comes off the tree, you know, you can really only screw it up the further you go down the supply chain, right? So I can screw it up in processing, I can screw it up in transport, export, whatever. I can screw it up in roasting, I can screw it up in brewing it. I haven't heard anybody kind of talk about really, maybe the best coffee in El Salvador that was produced this year. As what makes it so great is that it's really hard to screw up at every single level of the chain. We did a good job processing it, but it's hard to mess up roasting. If you get the roast right, then it's harder to mess up the brew profile to it. I mean, you're so kind to your consumers.
I mean, that's that in that and that's what made. I mean, one of the things when I talk about the industry, one of the problems we have is that we are industry centric. Like most of the coffee industry thinks about, like, we understand everything, but we're coffee geeks. Like we don't think about the end user. And that's, as a farmer, that's what we're trying to do. It's the same methodology Apple did. Like you produce something that's easy to access. It's complicated because technologies used to be very complicated. You had to know programming and everything. But then they came up with much easier way to access technology. The same as coffee. Like we're moving on. Like you see what they're doing in the States with this frozen coffee from, what's their name, in Boston? No, and that's in Boston.
I know who you're talking about. I'm blanking on the name right now, which is horrible. Like anytime I visit the States, this is what I drink now, just because it's so much easier to get a good cup of coffee that way at home.
And then now you start seeing that specialties also moving into instant coffee, because we used to be very pure, like very, oh no, you have to grind the bean. I mean, that takes forever. And in the life of a real person, that you have very little amount of time to be doing all this mumbo jumbo regarding brewing an amazing cup of coffee. So if we were more customer centric, we would be thinking more of the end user of every part of the chain, and making it easy so there's less ways to screw it up. But we tend to make it very difficult. Like, oh, if you want a really nice cup of coffee, you to have a grinder that's going to cost you at least $500. Then you have to have a kettle that's going to cost you like $300. I mean, then you start putting all these price tags to stuff, and then people are like, I just want a cup of coffee. I don't want to spend $10,000 on equipment to brew a cup of coffee. So that's why now you're seeing, I think this is the fourth wave. And I was at a symposium in Boston and they were talking, we don't really know where this is going. But for me, the fourth wave is a higher integration with the roaster and the producer, with a more customer centric industry where we're going to cater more consumers that were not into specialty because they saw it as a very complicated language that they didn't want to
Hmm.
speak because they didn't want to become coffee geeks.
Yeah, it's sort of a yeah, it's almost like the regression. I feel like there's a regression back to kind of just a black cup of coffee as a part of that. But yeah, the brand's name is Cometeer, out of Boston.
Commandeer.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah, and this is kind of a great example. Kelowna and Smalls over here. I'm in the UK. Over here in the UK, doing experiments with instant coffee and this kind of idea that, hey man, you can do an old kind of a luxury product in
You
coffee
can.
that is instant coffee. Cometier was that experience. I mean, it's frozen. You put it in a cup. You add hot water, and it's a good cup of coffee. I mean, it's a
It's
good cup
amazing.
of specialty coffee by kind of any measure. And yeah, it tastes a little bit cold brewy, and it's got some. You lose a little bit of the nuance, the florality of it, I'm sure. And there's the best cup of Raul Rivera's coffee is probably not going to come out of a frozen pod or instant. But that to be said, it's your first experience in coffee on a cupping table where you're like, I think these guys are full BS. I mean, I can't taste what they're tasting. Most people can't taste what they're tasting, and so you need something completely outrageous. So then it becomes, how do we capture as much of that quality in a way that's as easily consumed as possible and keep that kind of integrity from plant to plant to the cup? I think you're right. I think there's probably something coming to that. And the pricing model of coffee going to $4 or $5 a pound is probably going to accelerate that, I would guess.
I'm guessing too. I mean, in my opinion, coffee is not very sensitive to price. People, I mean, and you saw it with Starbucks. I mean, Starbucks is drank by people who have low income to high income, and it's expensive. It's not cheap to have to pay for five, six, $4 for a cup of coffee, and people do it because it's something, like you said when we were talking. This industry is very attractive. People need coffee. It's pretty much the fuel for humans. So you decide if you want to have premium or you want to do like you can go to like substitutes of caffeine, which are artificial, but they're not going to be good for your health. But I mean, I think that's what's going to happen. I mean, good coffees are going to be consumed by people who can, and then you're going to have substitutes of caffeine for people with very, very low income that are going to be wanting a caffeine drink, but coffee is going to be a little bit overpriced in the future, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I've got to stop on, we go from talking about auctions and luxury lots to talking about instant coffee. I love that, but I do need, I'll cut it there. Raul, thank you so much for the time. Thank you for, honestly, just sharing your story, sharing your heart on this podcast. It means a lot. I loved hearing about this. I know others will too.
Thank you.
You are such a legend in El Salvador, such a evangelist is the word. It was like when we were kind of doing research for this, interview and this conversation to make sure I was up on all things. It was kind of this idea of, okay, this guy is really evangelizing around this, creating cooperatives for your teams, creating, building in a way to improve the quality of lives of people in your community and improve the price of quality for El Salvador. So I just appreciate that so much. And I look forward to tasting and trying your coffee that you're sending to Dubai. So really looking forward to that, having you a part of this auction.
It'll be an honor. Hope everything turns out amazing.
It will be great. So for everybody listening, you can, by the time this comes out, you'll be able to register for the Dubai Coffee Auction by DMCC Coffee Center. The auction will occur for Raul's Coffee on January 19th. It will be live in Dubai, but it'll be accessible everywhere in the world. We'll have sample sets on sale, so you'll be able to buy the sample sets, try the coffee yourself. If you are in Dubai, we'll be doing cuppings from the 18th and the 9th through the 19th when the auction actually occurs. So we will see you all there. Please register, buy a sample set, and try this amazing Pacamara Honey that you cannot screw up the roast profile on. It's going to taste good no matter what. That's Raul's own words. And Raul, we will talk to you soon.
Thank you very much, David. And it was a pleasure to be with you here. Hope we could partner up for new future projects.
Yeah, me too. Look forward to that.